just before dawn broke over northern Tehran. A sudden, violent assault shattered the early morning calm. Nearly 30 missiles slammed into the fortified compound of Iran's most powerful figure, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader since 1989. The explosions rippled through the city as the first call to prayer floated between apartment buildings, sending glass flying hundreds of yards away. Within minutes, the heart of the Islamic Republic was engulfed in flames. Kamune, the ultimate ruler overseeing war, peace, and religious doctrine, had steered Iran through decades of sanctions, proxy wars, covert operations, and internal turmoil, outliving presidents, prime ministers, and regional adversaries. But this morning, no warning came soon enough. No shelter was strong enough to withstand the attack. This was no symbolic strike. It was a calculated, decisive blow. Satellite images later revealed a cluster of missile impacts tightly packed around Tehran's main administrative buildings. Almost immediately, communications from the compound went silent. In those chaotic first moments, no official response emerged. Only smoke billowed up against a still darkening sky. But these missiles were just the beginning. As Tehran reeled, American and Israeli aircraft launched simultaneous coordinated strikes throughout Iran, targeting airbases, missile stockpiles, and command centers one after another. What had long simmered as a covert shadow conflict now erupted into open warfare. By sunrise, the region had irrevocably crossed a critical threshold. This opening salvo did far more than damage infrastructure. It forced momentous decisions in Tehran, Jerusalem, Washington, and across the Gulf. Once war begins to demand choices at the highest levels, it rarely ever stays contained. For several tense hours, silence reigned. Iranian state media aired regular programming. Officials remained silent, offering neither confirmation nor denial amidst swirling rumors, secretive diplomatic communications, and vigilant intelligence monitoring for follow-up moves. Then, in the early hours of Sunday, an explosive announcement shattered the quiet. Ayatollah Khamenei was dead. Israeli sources reported that over 30 precision-guided munitions struck his main compound in that first devastating strike. Unlike in previous crises, Kamune had not been relocated to a fortified underground bunker. Iranian outlets later confirmed he died in his office. The stark symbolism was impossible to miss. The very core of Iran's authority interrupted abruptly. A nation's leadership cut mid-command. Western media recounted that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and US President Donald Trump were briefly shown imagery verifying the strike's success. This confirmation, whether meant as strategic validation or political messaging, underscored the enormity of the event. This was not the death of a battlefield commander. It was the elimination of Iran's highest authority. Khamenei's three-decade reign had spanned Iran's adaptations to the post-Cold War world, the U.S. invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan, the ascendancy of Hezbollah, the sprawling expansion of proxy conflicts, and the enduring nuclear standoff with the West. To many supporters, he represented steady ideological continuity. To critics, the embodiment of rigid authoritarianism that had defined Iran's path for generations. Now, with his sudden death, a profound uncertainty gripped the nation and the region. The power structure that had withstood countless storms was shattered, and the new reality promised to reshape the future in ways still unfolding. In the region, he was more than just a leader. He was a constant, a fixed point. His death isn't merely a military milestone, it's a psychological rupture with far-reaching consequences. Regimes built tightly around a single authoritarian figure often face fractures when that figure disappears, yet sometimes they only grow more rigid. The pressing question now transcends the immediate query of who ordered the strike. It probes deeper. Can the system he meticulously built endure without him? The strike that obliterated the supreme leader didn't end with just his death. Reports have emerged that Moghaba Khan, his son, and a cleric long rumored to be in line for succession, was also killed in the barrage. Alongside them fell senior leaders from Iran's defense establishment, including the defense minister, the intelligence minister, and the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Several advisors tied closely to the country's missile and nuclear initiatives are believed to have perished as well. On the surface, this appears to be a classic example of decapitation, the deliberate removal of a regime's ideological and operational core in one swift, coordinated action. In modern warfare, such strikes aim to induce paralysis. The absence of central command splinters retaliation efforts. Leadership vacuums sow doubt and fracture loyalties. Shock waves ripple down through hierarchical structures, undermining cohesion. However, Iran's power structure is far from a one-man show. Authority weaves through a complex web of overlapping institutions: clerical councils, security services, the Revolutionary Guard, intelligence networks, and political bodies alike. While power at the apex is heavily concentrated, the underlying system is meticulously designed for resilience and continuity. This redundancy isn't incidental. It's baked into the doctrine. Iran's strategic culture, forged in decades of confrontation, assumes its leadership will always be a target. As a result, wartime delegation is a deeply ingrained practice. Command chains extend well beyond individual offices, ensuring communications and contingency plans are widely distributed throughout the network. Historically, the regime's strength has depended on this multi-layered structure. The president remains alive and active. The foreign minister continues to represent Iran on the global stage. The regular army's command seems intact. Figures like Ali Lakhani have been highlighted by analysts as potential stabilizers, capable of holding the state apparatus steady. Even after such a devastating strike at the highest level, the gears of Iran's institutional machine have not ground to a halt. The death of the supreme leader immediately changes perceptions, dominating headlines and shifting diplomatic calculations. But a regime's collapse demands more than just removal. It requires fragmentation of the body politic. And for now, though the head has been severed, the body continues to move. Whoa! Within hours of the announcement, Iran's constitutional mechanisms sprang into action. Under the country's legal framework, a temporary leadership council, composed of the president, the head of the judiciary, and a senior cleric from the Guardian Council, assumes authority during the transition. This mechanism was crafted for precisely such a moment. Succession, even sudden and unexpected succession, is not an afterthought in the Islamic Republic. Above this interim council stands the assembly of experts, an 88-member clerical body empowered to appoint the next supreme leader. Their deliberations are shrouded in secrecy, shaped by shifting alliances and complex power dynamics. The future leadership will emerge from within these opaque corridors, navigating the intricate web of influence and ideology that defines Iran's political landscape. In the shadowed corridors of Thrawn, power plays out away from public eyes, quietly shifting hands among senior clerics, commanders of the Revolutionary Guard, and intelligence operatives. The political landscape thrives on secrecy, decisions forged behind locked doors, far from prying cameras. Among the whispers already circulating in diplomatic circles, one name stands out: Ali Lakhani, a seasoned political figure with deep-rooted connections across the system. He is widely regarded as a likely consensus candidate. Yet others speculate that the wartime empowerment of the Revolutionary Guard could tilt the scales, granting them outsized influence over who claims leadership. In Iran, ideological legitimacy and coercive might are inseparable partners. But this leadership transition is unfolding under extraordinary circumstances. Active bombardment, relentless external pressure, fractured communications, and the recent loss of senior figures. Different factions perceive this turmoil in contrasting ways. Some see opportunity, others fear a threat to their collective survival. Yet, the fabric of Iran's strategic culture is woven with such scenarios in mind. Authority isn't hoarded but delegated ahead of time. Operational continuity is paramount, ensuring that proxy networks push forward without theological debates. Military units advance undeterred by clerical consensus. Above all, stability is the overarching goal. Globally, eyes are fixed on Thrawn, searching for cracks in a system famed for its resilience. Inside, the battle to consolidate power rages on. The outcome of this succession will signal whether this pre-dawn strike marks a pivotal turning point or merely a trial the system was designed to weather. As the internal recalibration unfolded, the military campaign surged into action on a vast scale. U.S. defense officials revealed that within the first 12 hours alone, nearly 900 strikes erupted across Iranian territory. Israeli sources reported some 200 fighter jets deploying in a swift initial wave, targeting approximately 500 sites in a carefully choreographed assault. The rapid-fire tempo was no accident. It sought to overwhelm before any chance of reorganization could take hold. The two allies executed their objectives with surgical precision. Washington targeted military command hubs, airfields, air defense networks, and nuclear infrastructure, the very framework that sustains prolonged conflict. Meanwhile, Israel focused its efforts on missile launch sites and leadership compounds directly tied to retaliatory capabilities. This was far from indiscriminate bombing. It was a systemic dismantling of Iran's warfighting capacity. Designated Epic Fury by U.S. Central Command, the operation represented the most concentrated burst of American military firepower in the region in a generation. Though officials spoke with measured restraint, the message was unmistakable. This was no mere warning shot. It was a calculated effort to cripple Iran's ability to respond effectively in hours, not days. Strikes struck deep and wide, reaching nearly every province. Satellite imagery revealed shattered runways, gutted aircraft shelters, and severed communications nodes. The mission was clear. Fracture command coordination, disrupt the seamless network linking radar arrays, command centers, and missile operators. The speed of the assault was crucial, aiming to keep air defenses and command structures off balance and fragmented. In the opening hours of the conflict, tempo became a powerful weapon in its own right. The faster and more decisively strikes were executed, the fewer chances Iran had to regroup or scale their defenses. Within just 12 hours, the momentum clearly favored the attackers. But beyond the sheer volume of attacks, what truly defined this phase was the intricate way they were carried out. Reports soon surfaced suggesting that American F-35 stealth fighters had directly confronted Iranian MiG-29s in air-to-air combat during these opening exchanges. Although confirmation remains limited, the very possibility of such clashes marks a rare and significant moment, an unprecedented direct face-off between two technologically advanced state air forces in the 21st century. Stealth jets reportedly operated deep within contested airspace, executing precision strikes against fortified shelters and command relay centers using guided munitions. Simultaneously, electronic warfare platforms jammed enemy communications and disrupted targeting systems, aiming not just for air dominance, but for operational freedom, seizing control over the battlefield's information and coordination networks. The introduction of new tools on the battlefield added further complexity. The United States is believed to have deployed a fleet of low-cost one-way attack drones known as the Lucas system. These share conceptual similarities with Iran's widely used Shahed 136 drones, creating a striking strategic symmetry. The very saturation tactics Iran once pioneered are now mirrored back at their origin. Along Iran's coastline, satellite imagery confirmed at least one warship had been struck. Carrier-based aircraft and long-range munitions targeted key naval infrastructure, shrinking maritime options as swiftly as the airspace was contested. The campaign flowed seamlessly from sky to shoreline, exhibiting relentless pressure without pause. Modern aerial warfare extends beyond dramatic explosions. It revolves around collapsing enemy systems, disrupting communications, grounding pilots, and sowing confusion among commanders about the status of their forces. Once uncertainty takes root within a military hierarchy, decisive reactions slow, creating further vulnerability. Yet, despite absorbing a barrage of strikes, Iran didn't remain silent. Beneath the surface, preparations for retaliation continued. In rapid succession, Iranian ballistic missiles launched from hardened sites nationwide, arcing westward toward Israel. These missiles were followed closely by swarms of one-way drones flying lower and slower, specifically designed to overwhelm interception systems. Across the region, radar screens lit up with converging signals. Israel experienced multiple assault waves through the night, with air defense batteries tirelessly engaging, intercepting dozens, potentially hundreds, of incoming threats. Even with high interception rates, the strain on defense systems was unmistakable. Sirens blared repeatedly across major cities, forcing civilians into shelters time after time. Iran's counterstrikes weren't confined to Israel alone. In the early hours of March 1st, an American airbase in rural Iraq suffered a direct hit from unknown munitions. This attack starkly highlighted the expanding scope of the conflict, where American assets throughout the region became active participants in the exchange. From these initial hours, a pattern was emerging, one of escalating, multifaceted confrontations spanning air, sea, and land, with each side continuously adapting tactics and deploying new technologies in response to the other's moves. The strike seemed highly focused on crippling systems of situational awareness, targeted attacks on radar installations, and the infrastructure vital to coordinating air defenses. The principle was clear: blind the enemy before pushing in deeper. While American and Israeli forces appeared bent on dismantling Iran's command framework, Iran itself launched a calculated countermeasure. This wasn't merely symbolic retaliation. It was a strategic, structured response. Multiple points were hit in saturation, carefully sequenced to maintain constant pressure. The exchange evolved into a grim cycle of reciprocal degradation, with both sides striving to erode the other's ability to see, react, and command. Each successive wave tightened the space for error, escalating the risk of miscalculations. Behind technical discussions of interception rates and sortie numbers, a profound human toll was mounting. In Israel, over 100 people sustained injuries from the initial missile barrages. Most wounds were minor, cuts and bruises sustained amid the chaos of rushing to shelters, but the suddenness shattered normalcy. Tragedy struck in Tel Aviv, where a woman lost her life amid the defensive turmoil. Even a well-functioning defense system could not prevent the spread of panic, the fall of debris, and lives altered in moments. On the Iranian side, the human cost was far more severe. By the evening of February 28th, the Iranian Red Crescent tragically confirmed no fewer than 201 fatalities, with over 740 more crowds desperately seeking rescue and medical care. Emergency workers navigated neighborhoods scarred by overlapping military and civilian spaces, where precision strikes tested their limits. One devastating blow targeted a girls' school in southern Iran, with reports indicating 148 lives lost at that single site, the majority children. Images of shattered classrooms, smoldering backpacks, and frightened survivors spread across the globe within hours, a grim testament to the devastating fallout. Despite repeated assurances from Washington and Jerusalem that the focus remained solely on military and leadership targets, reality blurred these lines dangerously. Urban landscapes rarely afford neat separations. Command centers adjacent to apartment blocks, missile launchers near highways, radar arrays overlooking schoolyards. Modern warfare often collapses those distinctions in a way that civilians bear the brunt. Once civilian suffering takes center stage, the tone shifts dramatically. The story ceases to be about deterrence or dominance alone. It becomes about profound human consequence, a consequence that accumulates faster than strategic calculations can control. As missile volleys crossed borders, shockwaves rippled through Iranian cities. In Thrawn, Shiraz, and others, small crowds emerged, visibly celebrating the announcement of the supreme leader's death. Fireworks erupted on rooftops, and posters bearing his image were torn down. For some, it was a moment of rupture, a sudden loosening of a grip that had held generations. Yet, these gatherings remained limited in scale, a far cry from the vast protests that have echoed through Iran in recent years. Many watched cautiously from balconies or behind curtained windows, wrestling with whether public celebration might prompt swift retaliation. In this moment of regime shock, conflicting emotions, fear and hope, intermingled as security forces moved decisively to reassert control. The fragile balance between public expression and repression was unmistakable as the country held its breath, caught between the weight of the past and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. Videos rapidly spread, capturing scenes of riot police breaking up gatherings, while reports of gunfire emerged from various districts. Despite turmoil at the leadership level, the mechanisms of control on the ground remained firmly in place. The Revolutionary Guard and intelligence agencies continued to operate effectively. Revolution demands more than just outrage. It needs coordination and a collective belief that the regime is beyond recovery. At this point, both elements were uncertain. The machinery for succession was already in motion, with state institutions signaling continuity rather than collapse. For many Iranians, this uncertainty is a double-edged sword. The removal of a supreme leader doesn't necessarily promise stability. The nation remains vulnerable due to economic fragility, potential foreign interference, and internal divisions. In this haze of ambiguity, caution often prevails over momentum. The streets flicker with moments of possibility in some neighborhoods and suppression in others. Whether these sparks will ignite a lasting transformation or be extinguished under pressure depends largely on unseen forces working behind the scenes. Beyond Iran's borders, the broader web of regional influence began to stir. In Yemen, the Houthi movement announced intentions to resume attacks on Red Sea shipping, threatening one of the world's most vital maritime corridors. That mere declaration unsettled commercial vessels and insurers alike. Regional conflicts often ripple on key trade routes. In Iraq, a militia aligned with Iran claimed responsibility for a strike on a U.S. airbase near Erbil al. Demonstrations gathered near Baghdad's Green Zone, with some protesters attempting to approach the American embassy before being forcefully pushed back. Iraq, long teetering between ties to Washington and Tehran, now faces increasing strain in its delicate balance. Meanwhile, Hezbollah and Lebanon condemned the strikes against Iran, but stopped short of declaring direct military engagement. This restraint is significant. Hezbollah, armed with a formidable arsenal, could open a northern front against Israel. Yet, such an action would invite severe retaliation. For now, caution holds greater sway than impulse. Iran's proxy network was designed to extend influence without triggering direct confrontation. This web of aligned groups applies pressure across multiple arenas, but relies heavily on centralized coordination. With Iran's leadership under strain and succession underway, the clarity and control of that coordination become critical. If even one actor escalates beyond carefully calibrated signals, the conflict risks fracturing into multiple simultaneous fronts in Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, and perhaps Syria. The war would shift from being concentrated within Iranian territory to splintering along existing fault lines throughout the region. Currently, signaling dominates over full-scale mobilization, but the proxy network remains alert. Once these forces begin moving decisively, containing the conflict will become exponentially more difficult. While early exchanges targeted military installations, the conflict's next phase crossed into civilian skylines. Iranian missiles and drones started striking deep within Gulf states' territories, not focusing primarily on oil facilities, but expanding the scope of the confrontation. The conflict's battleground transformed dramatically, shifting from traditional targets like oil fields and refineries to the heart of urban life, airports, towering residential buildings, and bustling financial districts. No longer confined to hardened military installations, the war's reach extended into the fragile glass and steel of modern cityscapes. In Bahrain's capital, several impacts made the headline news, including a missile strike alarmingly close to the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet headquarters, sending a blunt reminder that American involvement had real consequences. Dramatic footage surfaced showing drones crashing directly into residential skyscrapers, with one building consumed by flames as night descended. The assault did not stop there. Bahrain's international airport came under fire, followed by a direct hit on a hotel in Manama, shaking the sense of safety in the city. Across the Persian Gulf, the United Arab Emirates faced its own wave of aerial attacks. Drones reportedly made harrowing approaches toward iconic structures like the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building on the planet, though at least one was intercepted just before impact. Nearby civilian buildings didn't fare as well, suffering damages that echoed the growing reach of these unmanned weapons. Luxury hotels such as Dubai's Fairmont and Burj Al Arab reported damage, and debris rained down near the crucial Jebel Ali port. Even drones that were shot down altered the region's psychological landscape. No skyline remained untouched or truly safe. Neighboring countries, including Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Kuwait, also reported numerous drone interceptions. These high numbers underscored a clear intent to disrupt and intimidate. According to Emirati officials, over 100 missiles and more than 200 drones were launched toward their territory within a single night. While the majority were destroyed in mid-air, the fact remains. One confirmed civilian fatality in the Emirates highlighted the stark reality that even the best defenses couldn't guarantee complete safety. Interestingly, Iran seemed to deliberately avoid targeting the region's crucial energy infrastructure. Instead, the strikes appeared designed to hit symbols of regional stability and prosperity, financial centers, travel hubs, and the pillars of tourism. The message was as psychological as it was physical. If a glittering metropolis like Dubai could burn, then what place in the Gulf could be considered truly secure? Before hostilities escalated, Gulf leaders had earnestly advocated for de-escalation, acutely aware of this very risk. Now, with their cities under fire, neutrality became an untenable stance. The impact on civilian skylines cracked the illusion of immunity and forced a grim reckoning with the conflict's new realities. As urban centers endured these shocks, another critical pressure point tightened: the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow maritime corridor funnels nearly 1/5 of the world's traded oil daily and has long been a flashpoint in regional tensions. Iran had repeatedly threatened to close it if pushed too far. Now those warnings resounded with renewed urgency. Iranian state broadcasts boldly declared that no vessel could expect guaranteed safe passage through the strait. Though there was no immediate confirmation of naval mines or an official blockade, tracking data revealed that tankers had begun to slow, pause, or even reverse course. The resulting psychological impact was swift and severe. Commercial activity stalled purely on the basis of perceived risk. Insurance markets reacted immediately. Premiums for ships attempting the passage soared, and some insurers halted coverage altogether. In effect, the Strait started to constrict without a single tanker being struck. This rising sense of incalculable risk brought maritime trade to a near standstill. European security officials labeled the situation as fluid but dangerously volatile. Should disruptions persist, global energy markets could feel the strain within days. Oil prices do more than just reflect supply. They respond to vulnerability and uncertainty. A prolonged freeze in the Strait of Hormuz would not only ripple through energy markets but send shockwaves across economies worldwide. The Gulf's vital shipping lane, a lifeline to factories, fuel stations, and global stock exchanges, stands at a crossroads. Should it be officially closed, reopening the strait would likely demand direct naval intervention, a move fraught with the risk of escalating conflict. Yet, letting this crucial corridor remain effectively sealed carries mounting economic costs worldwide. This military campaign began before dawn with a sudden barrage of 30 missiles hitting a compound in Thrawn. Since then, the conflict has spilled into the skies, the streets, proxy networks, and civilian skylines. Now, it threatens the world's most essential shipping artery. Wars don't just spread because weapons travel. They ripple outward as each decision triggers the next. Once this chain reaction starts, its course becomes impossible to predict.